Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Every Horror Film Where Horror is Forever. And today we are talking about The Lodge. That's right, The
That's right.
Lodge.
That movie, the one you're thinking of. I know you probably have definitely heard of The Lodge. I know you're thinking about it. When did The Lodge come out? A couple years ago?
2019, I believe. 2019.
Oh my god. I'll be honest, never heard of this movie until you called the shot on it, man. Never heard of it, never seen a trailer for it. Did you know about it when it came out?
I didn't know about it when it came out, but the past year or so when I've been on Hulu,
Mm-hmm.
I always see it pop up, and I've kind of looked at people have always kind of recommended it. And it's we're trying to do obviously now with Thanksgiving over, getting towards Christmas, doing some Christmas theme, some holiday theme movies, and this kind of came across, and I was like, I've always been past couple of years I thought about wanting to watch this movie, and then I saw it kind of come up again, and I was like, it takes place around Christmas time. It's not really a Christmas horror movie, but it has some of those elements in there. So I said,
Right.
hey, I'm gonna pull the trigger. Let's give it a shot, see what happens.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's not a Christmas movie per se, but I mean, we've seen the Christmas horror movies. We've seen the Krampus. We've seen the Christmas horror stories. We've seen the Jack Frost. So let's take a shot on something. And we've had some good luck with some one-offs this year. No One Will Save You, Cobweb, which we reviewed last video. Barbarian, I think, was last year. We've had some good luck with some one-offs. So yeah, maybe a one-off from 3 years ago. Why not? Let's try it out.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't really know much about the film other than the summary of what it said. And then I had always seen some people kind of talk about it online, said it was maybe an underrated movie. So I said, okay, why not? Let's take a chance here. Let's watch The Lodge. Jeff, would you like me to start first, or would you like to take the honors?
You know what? I pulled the trigger on Cobweb. This one was your call. I'm gonna let you take the lead on this one.
I did not enjoy this film.
Doesn't
And I hate to say that because I picked it and it makes me look bad. And that's it. That's the review.
make you look bad. It makes it look like you have expectations, and it makes it look like you have standards. And I'm right there with you. This is a big steaming pile of nothing. This was I don't know, man. There's something about this.
This movie and this movie is almost 2 hours long. And
Yeah.
I paid $4 to rent this movie off YouTube because I thought that it was going to be on Hulu. When I went on there, it said you needed to have Max to have it. I'm like, oh, okay. Max is the only one I don't have. I used to have it. I canceled it. I haven't resubscribed. So I said, okay, you know what? I'll pay $4 to rent it on YouTube, whatever. And I kind of wish I had that $4 back because I could have went to the store and bought like a water,
Hell water.
a water or something. I don't know. Um, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. But it just it to sum up this movie before we get into it is this movie tries to build up something and there's nothing to build. And when you finally get to the ending, when you're expecting this like big twist or something crazy to happen, it doesn't really build to anything, and it happens, and it's kind of like, oh, well, okay,
Yeah, this movie is well, first and foremost, the cinematography is done by the same guy, I think, who did Killing of the Sacred Deer and The Lobster and a couple other movies. He's got good shots. This movie is very pleasing to look at. The cinematography is fantastic in this movie. Good color palette, good color grading. Very moody, cold atmosphere. It looks great. It's one of those storybook movies. But yeah, that doesn't make up for the lack of a premise. I mean, this movie is almost all ride and no content. This movie is we've had a look, last 5 years, we've had a big just slew of these artsy fartsy pictures, man, where they're just like trying to do some kind of pretentious message about something or some kind of allegory about this, and it's elevated horror, you just don't get it. It's like, no, I get it, it's just not fun to watch. I wouldn't really call this a horror movie any more than I would call The Lighthouse a horror movie. This is very I'm shocked that A24 didn't make this. um this seems like an A24 film, but it's not. And now that I know it's not, it seems like a wannabe A24 film. So this movie was very empty through and through. And the first half of the movie, I was like, "Huh, one of the things I like about this so far is the lack of dialogue. It really lets the actors breathe." And then I get to the end of the movie, I'm like, "Oh, say something, say something else." I didn't get anything in this, but this is just one of those Sundance Festival art pictures, and it's not really anything with any lasting impact, at least not for me.
Yeah, I really like what you said about the cinematography because this film is shot really well. I will give it
Mhm.
credit for that. A lot of the scenes they do a lot of zooming in and zooming out in certain angles, and it looks great. The color on it looks good. I will give it credit for that. It is and at first I really was in for the ride of the film until the actual premise started to, kind of unfold. It just kind of lost its way. But you know, I mean, like you said, it's shot very well, but to me, there's not a lot of characters that I care about in this film. I don't really care about any of them at all. I know it's got the kid from It,
Yep.
and he's been in a couple other things as well. It's actually got Alicia Silverstone in like the first 5 minutes.
I know. Yeah, and I was surprised
She
she
was
wasn't the lead.
yeah. So I actually liked her character the most, despite she was only in the film for just a few minutes, and we'll explain why. But the dad, the kid, the girlfriend, I the other kid, I really didn't care for them at all. And it was hard for me to get behind them. And then last thing I'll say before I'll turn it back to you is and I don't this film came out in 2019, so it's not like this film just came out and I'm getting ready to make the points I'm going to make. This just happens to be the last film I saw that had these elements in it. You hit the nail on the head when you said this elevated horror, this artsy fartsy type stuff. And in a lot of films that like Hereditary that works so well. It just was such a good movie and it worked. But this movie wanted to be Hereditary so bad, but it was
Mhm.
not even close to that. Not with the dollhouse scenes, with the random music, the kind of off kiltered shots, and just kind of weird elevated horror is what people have been calling it. And a lot of times those films they do work for me if they're done well, but a film like this, it did not work for me. And and like I said, this came out in 2019, but I for the past 4 or 5 years, we have done the horror community in terms of film. They are absolutely stuck on this idea of, oh, we have this character and she's going through trauma or guilt. Every single movie that is a character study about a person, it's always about them overcoming trauma, overcoming guilt. It's like, listen, we get it. I understand those are real life things and they are relatable, but can we please get a different horror premise than someone going through a movie and they're like, "Oh, I'm trying to overcome this trauma of this thing that happened to me." It's like it just has been beaten over the head to death over the past 5 years, and I'm so bored with that premise.
Dude, I'm so glad you're right there with me in it. Dude, like I said in reviews past, the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s had a horror trend, which was like this meta, almost comical horror where everything was just a rip roaring good time. I hated that era. And then you enter like the late 2000s to the early 2010s where everything was like super edgy and dark and gory, thanks to Saw. And fine, I like that better than the prior, but now we're entering an era of, like you said, everything is just like this psychology 101 character study about trauma or depression or ADHD or repressed memories. Like everything's got to have some kind of, if you look at the big nine conflicts for storytelling, we no longer get man versus man or man versus world anymore. We get man versus self every single time, and it's good. It's a good story, but not every time, man. Not every movie's going to be Hereditary. Not every movie's going to be Midsummer. You know what I mean? A lot of people didn't like Mother with Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem. I like that movie, but not every movie's going to be that. You know, it's pretentious. Pretentious is the word that fits it, and it's just kudos to you. They're not bad movies, but they're just so like. Let me ask you, man. I mean, if I were to clump together 20 movies, which would be commonly labeled as elevated horror, how many of those do you think you'd actually enjoy?
Probably like two,
Yeah, right.
maybe.
They're so just it's it's used as a disguise to mask how cheaply made the movie is. I mean, that's really it. I mean, y no one wants to do a low budget film anymore unless it's like a deep philosophical character study on human emotion. That's just hey, no disrespect to the writers here, no disrespect to the directors here. It's a trope at this point, and I'm tired of it. And this movie, I guess, just caught me on a bad day where I was thinking about how tired I am of that trope. But eh, come
You
on, too
you
much.
you know what the problem is? It insists upon itself.
It insists upon itself. I did not care for half of A24's filmography. It insists upon itself
Happens every time.
every time.
All right, well, we'll get into this thing and we'll start it from the top. And we might skip over a couple things in the middle of this, and we'll explain why, but we'll get there. So this movie starts off really it's you've got this wife, she's taking her two kids to her ex-husband or current husband. They're separated but not divorced. Taking them there for the weekend or whatever, and the dad gets there, or they get there, and the dad's like, "Hey, mom, we need to talk. Kids, go away." And they start talking, and he's like, "Hey, you want some coffee?" She's like, "Sure." He's like, "Well, I don't have any."
All
It's like, okay.
right.
And then he's like, "Well, I think we need to finalize our divorce." And she does not take it well, which I'm talking about Alicia Silverstone's character.
Yep.
And And while we see a couple shots throughout this where I will say this, they do a very nice job of hiding the new girlfriend, the new fiance. They really kind of build her up because they do these shots where the dad's like, she's not here, don't worry. But you look outside, you could see her walking around, but they don't show her face. I will give them credit. They do a nice job of kind of building that up. You're very like, oh, what is this? What does this lady look like? What's her presence? Who is she? So um yeah, we get this trope of hey, divorced parents, new mom coming into the fold. I mean, I personally myself have been there. I know a lot of people have been as well. So I get that it's a realistic scenario. Um, but then we get a scene that really catches you off guard. But I'm not gonna lie, I did see it coming from a mile away. When Alicia Silverstone gets back and she's just kind of drinking some wine and she just kind of looks sad and kind of she takes her necklace off. I said, I know exactly what's getting ready to happen here. And she shoots herself. And it's like, wow, this started very quickly.
Yeah, it's the 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 suicide with the gunshot is enough to be a jump scare. It's loud. It's in the middle of a bunch of silence. It can catch most off guard. It caught me off guard a little bit. Um, yeah. Really, the biggest thing that it has going for the story, other than setting up where they are in their marriage, is hiding Grace's face. This new girl, this homewrecker, potentially, this person who the audience is defaulted to not liking. They're hiding the face. It's a mystery. Like, oh, is she gonna be there? Is she gonna be there? And she's like hiding in the window, obscure, and like walking out the back, and you don't get a good look at her. Um, yeah, it's got that theme going for it, where this it's like a mystery of who she is or what she is. And uh, good job, I guess. Mom kill mom kills herself, and I get the funeral scene. and you get a scene of them outside the funeral with a bunch of black balloons, like doing their ritual of releasing the balloons, and it goes up around the cross statue. The daughter, who's taking it especially hard, tried to tie her mom doll, because she plays with dolls who are modeled after family members. Tried to tie her mom doll, I think, to her black balloon, but the balloon didn't fly because of it. She threw a fit and threw the balloon in the air. Very establishing visual art shot of these black balloons swirling around this cross. Um, so right away, you kind of have a feeling that the cross is going to be something.
Yeah.
You go to the next scene. She's breaking down in her bed, and her dad's trying to comfort her, and her only priority, the only thing on her mind is like, "Mommy's not going to get into heaven. Mommy's not going to get into heaven." And dad's failing to comfort her. So right away, you can kind of tell that religion is a big deal for them. Yeah, you could tell this is going to be kind of a religious based story, and sure enough, it was.
Yeah, there is lots of imagery about Christianity, religion, things like that. Lots of crosses and things like that in this movie, and um, you get a good sense. I will give them credit for this. The two kids, I know how we are about certain child actors, but they seem to have pretty decent chemistry here.
Yeah.
I actually like this actor a little bit more than I liked him in It. I think maybe because it focused on him just a little bit more instead of having like five or six other characters he had to bounce off of. I think he did a good
Mhm.
job in It, but actually I think they had really good chemistry together, considering their age, and they really did hone it down as the whole, we miss our mom. This new lady's not our mom type thing. I like I said, in the first 20-30 minutes in this film, I was kind of invested to see where it would go because like I like I said, I know kind of that feeling. So I was very interested to see where it would go. But not long after that is when it started to lose my appeal. Um, so the dad, now that the mom is deceased, he's moving on. A couple months go by. They're having Thanksgiving dinner together. He's like, "Look, kids, like, I want you to meet my new fiance, Grace. I think that's her name.
Mhm.
Yeah." Um, and they're like, "No, screw you." Like
All right.
they're like, "No, you can never take the place for our mom," and all this stuff. And so I get it. And come to find out, so the dad, I guess he's a writer or something like that, or a psychologist, a writer, or something, a research. I don't know, something
I
like
think it
that.
works for the paper. Like he said something about a paper,
Hmm.
something where he has a very lavish house and a lodge in the mountains of New England, which is not cheap. Um, yeah, who's calling a writer? I don't know. It's not important.
Yeah, and so come to find out, his new fiance is a girl that survived a suicide cult. And I don't know about you, but I'm not too keen in falling in love with people that had survived a suicide cult or any cults at all.
Yeah, that's not on my to-do list. It was a book. And the kids are like, she is the subject of dad's book. So I guess he is writing a book or wrote a book about suicide cults or a suicide cult, and she was the sole survivor of it when she was a kid. Um, kind of weird. Kind of weird to fall in love with the subject of your book as a younger, hotter replacement for mom. So right away, you kind of you start to shift your blame onto the dad, where it seems like the dad is the bad guy of this story. Um, but yeah, she was the member of a cult, and the kids know this because they saw a video on dad's computer where he was doing his research for his book about footage that she had took when she was a kid in the cult of like a sermon, like the pastor or whatever you want to call him, giving a speech about repenting for your sins. Super religious, super um like fanatical Christian cult.
Mhm.
Um, and they were repenting and they were talking about how you know how to open this door, and what he means was offing yourself. And some more found footage tricks go by, and she enters like a dorm where there's people lying under blankets with tape over their mouths with the word sin written on them, presumably after death. I don't know. But yeah, you get this kind of found footage, like eeriness of like what she saw in there. So at this point, I'm still invested. You know, I one of my favorite types of horror movies is found footage. So yeah, I'm like, yeah, you know, found footage. What are we gonna see? Is this gonna be like a sinister type situation where we see some creepy shit on camera, or what? But and cults are interesting. You know, cults are a very interesting topic, and if done correctly, can make a very strong horror movie. But I'm still invested at this point, but at this point, my mind is going to show me Grace. Let's get her talking. Let's see what's going on with her.
Correct. I agree. At this point, they've kind of built her up, and you kind of see what you want to see what she looks like, what she has to say. And I like the cult stuff in the way that they shot it. It looked like sinister, very like 8 millimeter VHS
Mhm.
camera. It was done well. Clearly a rip, I'm not gonna say a homage or rip off or whatever, a play on the Heaven's Gate cult,
Yeah,
that did pretty much the same thing with the purple sheets and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of getting those vibes. I'm like, okay, this could go somewhere. My attention is still there. And we finally get to meet Grace. The kids, the dad's like, you know what, kids, let's go up to the lodge, the cabin up in the mountains. I want you to meet her. We're gonna go spend a couple days up there, and you get to know her. It'll be great. And at this point, all we've seen is just kind of far away shots where we can't see what she looks like. And then finally, they stop, they pick her up, and she gets in the car, and she finally turns around, and she just looks like a normal, person. So I will say I do like the fact that I feel like they kind of shot it from the kid's perspective, where like this new mom figure is like coming into play, and like, you know, she might she just is like a further away character, and just the way they shot it just kind of made it seem like it was kind of from a child's perspective, where it might seem kind of scary. But once you see her, it's just, an average lady.
just a lady. Nothing deformed about her. Like no twist in her appearance. Like she wasn't Alicia Silverstone's twin sister or anything like that. Just some lady, you know. So the reveal wasn't really anything punchy. She didn't kind of introduce herself in any kind of big way. Like maybe I was kind of expecting her to like get in the car and like blow up on the kids about something, or have some kind of outburst or something strange or something not socially acceptable happen. But no, she's just some lady with a little ass dog. So I don't know. I don't know. At this point, I'm kind of just throwing my hands up. I'm like, get to the lodge, get there, let's go.
Let's get Yeah, at this point I'm kind of like, okay, I you're trying to build something up here. I don't really know where it's going to go, but all right, let's just see what happens. So they go up to the lodge, and the kids, they're not really saying anything. She's trying to make it Grace is trying to say a couple things to the kids. They just don't really say much, or they barely say a word, as expected. So they get up to the lodge, and they're there. They're, unpacking, trying to have a good time. And, she's really trying to make conversation with the kid, the son. And, he's just like not having it. He's like, I don't want to talk to you. Leave me alone. The girl, Mia, she's a little bit more receptive, but, you know, they try to kind of, make it work. And this is kind of when we start to see a little bit of the cult tie into the religious stuff we talked about earlier, is that within this house, because this is where the mom used to go when she was alive, there's crosses, there's this painting, and we get the scene where it's very clear that Grace is kind of unnerved, or kind of she's taken aback by all the stuff because of, I guess, her trauma when it comes to the cult that she was in.
Yeah, she's uncomfortable with the crosses. She's uncomfortable with the painting. One thing that happens rather abruptly is, the first act, the main characters or characters seems like the kids. It seems like it's a story about the kids, or maybe even the dad, or that at least that trio of them. And Grace is like this external force. But as soon as we enter the lodge, Grace gets the most screen time. She becomes the main character of this movie. I don't know that I was ready for that because I was sitting here like being prepared to not like her.
Mhm.
But here it is, the focus is shifting to her, where it's just like shots of it's funny. We've gone from shots of hiding her face to entirely too many close-up shots of her face in the span of about 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
it very abruptly changes to it being her story now. Whatever, that's cool. Let's see where it's going. Um, Grace is trying, she's unpacking, she's hiding the cross, hiding the picture of the mom and whatnot, and loosening up a little bit. Next day comes up, the family's outside on the ice. Grace comes out wearing a hat, and the kids immediately like, that's our mom's hat. And she's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And kids run off with the hat. So Grace doesn't mean any harm. She's not malicious. She doesn't if you don't get the vibe that she's trying to replace her mom. Other than the awkward like hiding the picture, I don't really sense any conflict around Grace and her place in all this. I don't really sense that Grace is, I don't want to say not aware, but I don't get any feeling that Grace is either feeling like a burden or feeling mischievous about inserting herself into this family. So really the only ones who keep bringing up mom are the kids, rightfully so. But bottom line is Grace doesn't seem like she's hell bent on replacing mom.
Yeah. And so pretty much they're out there doing their thing. And it's this next scene or this next series of events that really just piss me off because this is not realistic at all. The dad gets a phone call. He says, hey, I've got to go into town for a couple days. It is a absolute blizzard outside, snowing. They have one car, the Jeep that they drove up there. And by the way, hey kids, I know you, one, don't like this lady. Two, you've never spent any time with her. Three, she has a very strange past. Four, would you mind staying here for a couple days with my kids while I go off and go back to work? I'll be right back. Jeff,
Yeah.
I know you have a daughter. If you were in this situation and you had only known this lady, knowing her background for such a short time, and you said, man, I got to go back to work. Hey, random lady I just met, would you mind watching my kid for a couple days while I go out of town in the middle of this snowstorm?
Let me tell you about work. No, that's not gonna happen. Okay. You know what it is? Sorry, kids, packing it up. Let's go back into town. We can come back out if you still want to in a couple days. I understand that you didn't even want to be here in the first place, let alone alone with her. So no, what a completely unrealistic situation. Um the whole movie is built on these very unrealistic reactions to external force. The dad rushing to either to marry Grace, and then the mom kills herself, and then the dad says that he was going to marry Grace in September. Well, then a couple months go by and it's Thanksgiving and they're still not married. um hey, you and I both know we ain't pushing a wedding back. Okay, you can't push it back that easily. So look, and then the kids are like, fuck you, dad. And it's like, it's her fault that mom died. No, it's dad's fault that mom died. But they're not acting like a family would act in this situation. Even when the daughter was crying about mom's not going to get into heaven, the dad could have said literally any billion combination of words, and he says, no one knows where we go. Dude, like these characters aren't acting like believable family members. They're not acting like believable people. So I can't relate to any one of them. And then, like, fast forward to what you said, the dad has to go into town for a little bit and decides to leave his kids with this very obviously mentally ill survivor of a cult. No, I don't believe that for a second. I can't suspend my disbelief. You've given me no grounded decisions from any of these characters. You've got the basically the psychotic who sleepwalks. You've got the kids who's got clearly has got anger issues. You've got a girl who's got attachment issues to inanimate objects, closely resembling family members rather than the family members. No, I don't. I'm not latched into this story because they're all just so like. eh, it's like I'm watching a play and these are
Yeah,
just stage props. They don't feel like people to me.
they don't. And the dad, I don't know if it's just they wrote him to be an asshole or he just doesn't care. Either way, I'm just not a fan of him and his character. Maybe they meant him to be that way. I don't know. But yeah, clearly a terrible father figure. So yeah, he leaves and now they're stuck with she's stuck with the kids and they don't know anything about her. She doesn't know anything about them really. And just imagine being in this with a stranger in your house, live with them for a couple days. It's like, you're just making small talk and it's just like just awkward, it's weird, and it's just
Yeah.
just not believable that would really happen.
Especially, it's awkward on its own, let alone the elephant in the room where your mom just died. You know what I mean? And this person's presence is a contributing factor to that. So that's just weird. I get it. It artsy fartsy, trying to make you feel uncomfortable, trying to make you feel uneasy the whole time. Doesn't work like that, man. We just watched Cobweb. I felt uneasy the whole time and believed that that was a family, an unlikable family, but at least they felt like a family unit. These just feel like propellers for the script, is what these people sound like.
Correct. I think the best part of the movie is that when I saw this, I knew you got hype as they were watching the thing.
Yo, they're watching the thing on TV. They're watching a much better movie on TV, and we get lots of shots of it, not just like in Halloween, where it's just like one or two shots. We get basically a whole scene from the thing. I'm like, hell yeah, at least I get to watch a good movie now.
Exactly. There are a lot of shots of that in there. So at this point, this is when stuff kind of starts to unfold a little bit. We've been waiting. We've been waiting for something to happen. The kids, they're alone at the lodge. We know something's going to happen. And over the course of several days, weird things start to happen where, you know, things start to kind of go missing. One day, after they were watching TV at night, they the kid pours Grace a drink. He's like, I'm sorry, I want to make amends with you. I'm like, bro, you just poisoned that.
Well, we missed a couple crucial scenes here.
Okay.
So, earlier that day or the day before, Grace was showering, and she gets out of the shower. She finds "mom" and a heart written in the steam on the mirror. And then you see Aiden kind of poke his head around the corner and then, tee hee 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 hee, I saw you naked, run out of the room, right? So Aiden's spying on her in the shower. Grace brings it up to him later at the dinner table, like, hey, I think we need to have a conversation. Why do you think it's okay to spy on me in the shower? Like, again, not a normal conversation. I mean, her priority in this conversation was to get Aiden to talk to her. And instead of saying, hey, don't look at me in the shower, child. But I don't know. That's yet another unbelievable argument. Um, what else happened? They were out on the ice. They
Yep.
were out on the ice. They did the thing with the mom's hat. Mia, the little girl, was playing by the fishing hole. Um, and suddenly Grace is like, don't go over there. The ice is going to break. Mia, that's a fishing hole. Like, she knew the dangers right away. So she starts running over to Mia, clearly caring for her life. Mia with her doll. Wouldn't you know it? The ice caves in around the hole. Mia starts to fall in. Grace goes in after her, saves Mia. I don't remember if she saved the doll or not, but they fall in the frozen water, and that is cold. That's some cold water. So a lot of time is spent on this scene, where like this brush with death. and the fishing hole, it's it's framed and it's delivered in such a way that I'm like, okay, this fishing hole is going to come up later, clearly. But they really dwelled on it like that was a high point in the movie, but
Mhm.
really what it was just a way for later that day, the characters to be cold and huddled around a fire, and the dad kind of apprehensive about going into town, but Grace is like, no, 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 I got it, don't worry about it. Fast forward to that night, they're still cold. Mia's still cold. Aiden brings Grace a hot chocolate, which is totally out of character. Yet another one of those unrealistic actions for the character, where Grace should have immediately been like, "Why are you doing this?" Like
Yeah.
any normal human being would have questioned that. I mean, Aiden is at the age where he's old enough to be conniving, so you should have questioned that right away. But yet again, these people don't act like people. Mia's cold. Aiden offers to get the gas heater from the storage and bring it into the living room. Grace immediately is like, "Oh, are you sure that's safe?" And Aiden's like, "Yeah, it's fine." They doze off to sleep. Grace has some of her crazy nightmares where she sleepwalks around the house and relives some of the traumatic memories of her cult days, and they wake up oddly different, don't they?
They do, and I want to say one more thing that we did miss. Sorry, because we just didn't enjoy this movie. We
Right.
just we didn't. But we're trying our best to break it down. We did miss the scene where the dad, before he left, he said, "Hey, crazy psycho lady, not only are you going to be left with my kids, here's a gun. How do you use it?" Gives her the gun, and she's out there like shooting the tree like she's fucking Wesley Snipes. I don't know,
And
and
crazy like Clint Eastwood aim, like no hesitation, no recoil whatsoever. Clearly handled a gun before. Movie never brings that up again. Yeah, yet another unrealistic human behavior. Here's the password to the safe. Here's the gun. Enjoy being alone with my kids in a blizzard.
yeah, it's just like what? That's just not believable. I can maybe you could say, oh well, maybe what if there was a bear that came out or there was intruders? But I'm like, man, I just don't believe that. I just have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, it's just very. If the dad cared enough about their safety to put the gun in the hands of a mental patient, he wouldn't have left in the first place. So
Nope.
yet again, we're already at like a dozen decisions being made by people who don't act like people.
Worst dad of all time.
For real.
Without even trying, he just sucks. So back to what we were saying, they wake up and all of a sudden everything is gone in the house. It has pretty much like they've been robbed almost. There's nothing left. Um, she can't find her pills, which she desperately needs to kind of stay on a sane level. All the kids' stuff is gone. There's no food, and yeah, they don't have anything. And the clocks have been changed because we know it's in December. It's getting close to Christmas. The clocks say like January 9th. I'm like, well, there's no way it's been that many days. And this is where I call me stupid, call me what you want. But I started to get very confused in this film because I could not seem to decipher between what I thought was real and what I thought maybe was a dream. Because they do this thing where they jump to, okay, well, it's Grace's fault. No, it's the kid's fault. No, it's the dad's fault. No, it's their. It's just there's so much going on, and it's really kind of hard to figure out what's going on, but not in like a man, this is really interesting. I want to figure out what's going on. I'm it's like, dude, I'm so confused. Who is responsible? Is the house haunted? I don't know. I'm just so confused at this point when all this stuff starts happening.
Yeah, it's like it was trying to act like it was unraveling some kind of storytelling narrative web, like a whodunit. But really, all it was doing was just jumping between four parallel train tracks of storytelling, and just not letting you know when it's jumping. It was very. It tried to throw you off. It wanted you to be like, "Oh, see that feeling you're having right now? You're uneasy. You're unsure." But okay, like that. You know why I'm not uneasy? Because there's no humans in this movie. No one acts like a person in this movie. So I'm not attached to anyone or anything at this point. So yeah, and part of it could be like the the idea that her antipsychotic pills are gone, so she's hallucinating more, she's having trouble differentiating between real and imagination.
Mhm.
I've seen that delivered in better ways in other movies. Um, really, this movie's too choppy to be complex.
Yeah, I agree. And so, after this happens, all these events start happening. They're sitting there, they're having Aiden and Grace are sitting there eating lunch or whatever, they're eating like beans and like crackers. I don't know. Uh and then he's like, "Hey, I want to tell you, like, I had a bad dream that like we suffocated and like from that kerosene at the fire." It was just kind of like, okay.
Okay. Hey,
And
guy
well,
who wouldn't talk to me for 3 days.
but you're gonna tell me that information, and pretty much at this point, it all kind of starts to come unraveled. And we get these instances where, you know, Grace uh, she finds a news article saying that all the kids died and they all died. And I'm like, wait a minute, and then they kind of start hyping it up where the kids are like, Aiden's like, hey, I'm just letting you know, like, we're in purgatory. What if we really are dead? What if we already died in the dream that I told you about? And this is like purgatory in the afterlife. And I'm just kind of like, okay, maybe they are dead. You're going somewhere with this. I don't know. I was very confused at what they were trying to do.
Yeah, before we get to the newspaper, though, Aiden tells her about the dream where it's like, I had a weird dream that we all died with the gas heater. Cut to the next scene. Immediately, I'm like, up, they're in purgatory. Got it. All right, we're in purgatory. We got a purgatory movie here. Hey, I'm all good with a good purgatory movie. I am. Like, I'm especially good with a low budget trapped in the house kind of movie. Okay, so you're talking about cabin fever being purgatory. I've seen it before, but I'm okay with it because there's cool ways to do that. I'm all for a good purgatory episode. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it fine. That's gonna be the story. That's fine. So more things are established, like the clocks and Aiden denying messing with the clocks, and everything's missing, or her drawers were empty. And the movie spends a good 15-20 minutes just doing these establishing shots to really reinforce the idea that they're in purgatory and to really convince the audience that they're actually in purgatory. um I think it was at this point that Grace went outside in the blizzard on like a hike to go find some help, but she struggled the whole way and stumbled across this house that just mysteriously looks like a cross, and saw a secluded figure in the window who wouldn't open the door for her. And so she had to truck back. I'm like, oh, okay, there's the allegory for religion not being there when you want it to be, and the struggles of blah, 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 artsy fartsy. You know what I mean? So I get it. I get the allegories. Bring them on. She gets back and she finds the picture outside, a picture frame that says "In loving memory of Aiden and Mia." So and a candle. So you get the idea that okay, Aiden was right. They're dead. This really is purgatory. But when they were packing up to go to the lodge, the camera spent an awful long time zoomed into Aiden's bag when he was loading it up. And one of the things that he loaded up was memorial candles. So why would he? What 12-year-old kid's going to pack candles for a trip to the mountains? But you know, at this point, I think if you're really, really trying to dissect it, you can start to unravel that there's something not right about the story here. But general audience will kind of be like, all right, they're in purgatory. I'm convinced. I mean, were you convinced at this point that this was purgatory?
I was, yeah. I pretty much was. I was like, okay, I guess this is where we're going. Which I kind of wish that's what they ended up doing instead.
Yeah.
Instead of what did happen. And yeah, so at this point, It's we think they're in purgatory. Grace is kind of losing her mind. She doesn't have her pills, so she's kind of off her rocker. We haven't heard from the dad in a couple days. Their phones are dead. They can't get them to work. There's no electricity. Nothing's working. The house has just become a house that's cold. And we get another pretty wild scene where we Mia's screams, and then she's like calling for Grace, and she walks up and she sees the kid hanging, Aiden hanging, like he hung himself. And at first I was kind of like, oh shit, like wow, like okay, we might actually go somewhere with this. And then he starts talking, and I'm like, is it he's like, we're in purgatory, we're not really dead, and this and that. He's like, I can't die. And it's just like, I don't know, man. I just was at this point, I just was like, where are we going with this?
Yeah, Aiden started to open his mouth and run it way too much. I mean, he very quickly started to hop on the we need to repent. We need to repent. It's we're stuck in purgatory because we haven't repented for our sins yet. And Grace with the trauma of the cult was like, shut up, shut
Right.
up, shut up. I don't want to hear this. We're gonna figure this out. But Aiden was immediately like chomping at the bit about repent and the religious stuff. And next time Grace had like taken a bath in the hot water in the sink, like the steamed words of repent appeared on her mirror. You know what I mean? So she started to like doubt her sanity. She started to hear the voice of the reverend from the cult talking about repenting and giving the sermon about the way out, the way out, and stuff like that. So she started to question her own sanity. Um, Grace goes outside to find her dog, who I guess had gone missing in the
Yeah.
purgatory days. Then the dog's found frozen outside. So
Points off.
it,
Why? This movie's already pissing me off, and then you kill a dog.
and then you freeze a dog, no less, and
Yeah.
you immediately find out why the dog was frozen. So Grace is sitting outside, just traumatized, just like losing her mind. Like, hey, if I found my dog frozen like that, I'd sit outside in the frozen ice too. So she's out there and she's just like out there for hours. And Aiden's talking to Mia in the house. He's like, all right, this has kind of gone on long enough. I think we need to tell her that this was all just a prank, bro. It was all a prank. It wasn't purgatory. The kids hid the decorations. The kids raided the cabinets, stuffed everything into this hidden cellar that Grace didn't know about, ran the clocks forward, let the dog out, cut the power, did everything to convince Grace that they had died from suffocation and were stuck in purgatory. Now, if I'm 12 years old with my 9-year-old sister, you know what prank I'm doing on my stepmom? Hiding all the phone chargers in the house. I mean, that's about it. I'm not going to these elaborate lengths to convince her that we're in purgatory of all places. So he's like, "Hey, come inside. It was all a prank. We were just tricking you." When they did the reveal of it being a prank, were you with it or were you not?
I was like, oh my God, really? I kind of had a feeling in the back of my head that was what was going to happen, but I just didn't want it to believe that that's the route they were going to go, because it just, you kind of got the rug pulled up from under you. And that's what they decided to do. And I was just like, that's like, okay, that's not believable. No 13 and 9-year-old, however old they are in this film, something like that, would go to the lengths to do that. Like you said, when I was that age, if I wanted to prank my parents or my mom or something like that, what would I do? I'd hide their car keys, maybe, like,
Yeah.
like this kid wrote a fake news article that looked legit, and took pictures and put it in a picture frame and saying, in loving memory, he let this lady's dog go out and freeze to death just so you could piss this lady off. Dude, the real enemy in this movie is the kids, because they are horrible people. They're horrible.
Yeah, that was pretty dark. Like I said, I had strapped in and I was ready for a good purgatory movie. When the twist reveal happened, I was strapped in for a good evil kids movie. Like that's fine, like all right, bring it on. The kids are the malicious ones. It's some kind of the tables turn, and who you think the victim is actually the victimizer. Okay, hey, fine. I'll take it. Whatever. Cabin Fever does that. I love a good Cabin Fever movie. I'm still in, despite all the poor decisions that these characters, quote unquote, are making. I'm still here, movie. It's slow. I'm falling asleep. I'm not liking your characters, but I'm interested to see where this is going. You still have me by a thread. But Grace has snapped. Her dog is dead. She lost her mind. She's traumatized. She's been off her antipsychotic pills for who knows how long. Her mind has snapped. She has finally crossed over into the side of believing, hey, we're actually in purgatory. So there's no coming back from that now. And even though the kids are like, oh, it's just a prank, bro, there's no coming back from it. Grace is now here kneeling on fire logs to burn herself,
Yeah.
trying to inflict some bodily harm to pay for her sins or whatever. She's gone full suicide cult, reverted back to her old ways, and the kids were not prepared for that. I understand. I mean, if you're 12, you're not going to think of the ramifications about playing a traumatic prank on a trauma victim. But dude,
Yeah, it's just and another thing that they faked was, the whole movie we're hearing like the
Reverend.
background of the Reverend, which actually in real life, that's the Grace character, the guy that played the Reverend, that's actually her real dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So and it's kind of a cool little trivia, I like to throw
Yeah.
those out there. But that's all you're getting from me, movie. That's it. But
And that's barely anything.
it's barely anything. But you hear this stuff. We'll come to find out they really hone in that the kids had a speaker hooked up in the attic and around the house playing this stuff. I mean, good God, dude, I could never think about doing anything this crazy whenever I was this age.
Yeah.
I mean, this is wild. These kids, they deserve to be frozen.
It was cruel and it was so carefully planned. I mean, this is the kind of prank you would see from like a grown adult. But
Yeah.
Aiden went on this trip knowing the plan. He went to the lodge with this plan in mind. First of all, this whole plan was contingent on two things: dad getting called into work and a blizzard while we were there. And both those things happening at the same time. So Aiden having the foresight to plan such an extravagant prank before they even left. I mean, yeah, they were planning it out with the dollhouse, and that's why we get so many establishing shots of the dolls in the characters' positions in the dollhouse throughout the movie, because they were planning it all along. But you not only needed the dad gone, but you needed him gone during a blizzard and immediately after falling in the ice water. Come on.
I will say this, and this is even a stretch because the plan wouldn't have worked as well. I think he may have had something planned on the trip that even if the dad didn't leave, that he would do stuff to make her look crazy. So he'd be like, oh, wow, maybe this girl really is crazy. Maybe kind of try to make him see that this is a bad idea. But you wouldn't be able to go to the links that you did. I mean, you could make up a story saying, oh, Grace punched me, and you've got like a bruise on your face from hitting yourself. You're not going to be able to go to the links that they did without him being gone. Um,
Exactly. And you already have Grace sleepwalking. You already have proven that you know where her antipsychotic medicine is. Just take them and dump them in the lake. There you go. She snaps. Dad sees the bigger picture. Problem solved. But this elaborate hoax about purgatory? No, dude.
Dude, I don't even think I knew what purgatory was when I was like 12. I don't think.
Right. I get that it's a religious family and that she's a religious cult victim, but purgatory, man. Like, play a prank that the kids went missing. Play a prank by flushing her pills down the toilet. Play a prank that, hey, you wanted to kill a dog so bad, just go freeze the dog. But purgatory, come on.
Yeah. So this is kind of where we get the big ending. So she's snapped, and at this point, we haven't heard from the dad in like an hour in the movie, and I'm just like, oh, I'm already in the thought process that he died because maybe he got in a wreck, in the snow. But no, it's just a random cutscene where the dad's like, okay, I'm on the way back. It's just nothing happened. He just like, oh yeah, I'm all the way back.
Yeah, I mean, they could have gone the super like expected route of like the dad intentionally abandoned them with this woman so she could like start a new cult or something, right?
Yeah.
Like there could have been, there's 1,000 different routes you could have gone, and yeah, maybe all of them are hokey, but you picked the hokiest, which is like he actually was at work and he wasn't in on the plan the whole time, and he's on his way back.
Yeah, and it could have went even better where, like you said, like maybe the dad was in on the plan and he left, and
And that
maybe
was the big twist at the end.
it was part of his research to see the kids like in this cult that he's studying, and that would have been
Yeah.
a lot more interesting, I think.
Yeah, you know what? I'm piecing it together in my head as I'm saying this, but like I would have rather watched a movie where this family had no religion, and so this dad rescued this cult survivor woman, put him in the predicament where he went away and she was left in the house with the kids, and tried to see as an experiment for his book to see if she could start a religious cult with just cabin fever. That would have been a cool fucking movie, and that would have been awesome. But instead, we got this everyone's religious, but I'm better than you. No, you're better than me. Like, what is the message of this movie now? What? The dad's innocent in all this? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's just it's all over the place, and so the kids are like, they're trying to tell her like, hey, like come inside, you're gonna freeze. Like, hey, we didn't mean to take it this far, and she's just like, I mean, she's gone, like
Gone.
nothing there. She's just holding her dead dog that's frozen to death. The dad's on the way home, and he comes in the house. It does this build up scene where you've got Grace, she's got the gun now, and she's like got the kids like up in the attic in the corner, but he's like almost home. He's trying to get the roads paved out so he can get there, and it's trying to do this little tension build up. Who's gonna get there first? Who's gonna lose first? And the dad walks in, and he notices like the house looks kind of a mess, and he looks on the ground. He sees the dead dog that's frozen. He's like, what? And then he walks upstairs, and I fully expected to see the kids dead already. But no, she somehow lets them go, and they're behind Grace as she walks down the stairs. And he's like, give me the gun. Like, hey, like, you don't want to do this. And she's talking about this repent for your sins type stuff that we've heard all movie. And yeah, boom, right in the head. Dad falls down the stairs. He's toast. The kids are freaking out, and they run outside and they try to escape. And hey, listen, you might could have fooled her and made a fake news article and did all this crazy stuff, but you know what you can't do? You can't drive a car in the snow, you stupid idiots, because they get stuck.
Yeah, and they don't know that because they're kids, but they know how to make a house seem like purgatory. Yeah. On a personal note, I'm about 90% certain this movie takes place in Massachusetts, in Western Massachusetts. I grew up in Central Massachusetts. One of the last years there, I had a blizzard that lasted 3 weeks, off and on power for 3 weeks leading up to Christmas. And that was in the middle of town. I was 12. I knew you couldn't drive in that. But you're telling me that these kids who so elaborately created a fake newspaper, played a sermon, hid psychotic medicine, planned a gas heater hallucination dream, everything, didn't think of a way out, didn't think of the ramifications of, hey, if she goes nuts like we're trying to make her, what's my way out? They didn't think about that. And they're only lucky that it happened when the dad was back with the car. So what the hell was their plan? Again, this movie is not making decisions like people would make decisions.
No.
But Grace shoots the dad for some reason instead of the kids that she's been with. And the dad's really dead. And I'll be honest, man, I was dozing off at this point. What happened next?
So she walks outside to try to get the kids because she's holding the gun. She walks outside and they're stuck in the Jeep. They're trying to figure out how to get out. And then the next scene cuts where the dad's body, where it was earlier on the staircase, you see like it's a blood streak. So she drug him to the table, and the final scene is really the dad who has got the bullet in the back of his head. He's just kind of sitting there. He's dead, just like this. You got her sitting over here. You got the two kids sitting at the table, and we just get this scene where she's just reciting like a song, and the kids are crying, and she's going on about this, nearer my God to thee. Sorry, that's just what I saw over here. Repent for your sins, all that stuff. And then she takes the tape that has sin on it. She puts it there, puts it over their mouth. And then the last shot of the movie is points at the gun, assuming that, she's going to shoot the kids. And that's the movie.
A zoom in on the gun, a heavily implied cult suicide. Dude, what is this? 7th grade English class? Creative writing 101? Why are you ending with a shot of the gun and implying that she's going to kill the kids? You want some balls? You want to do something that's worth talking about? Shoot the kids on screen. For real. But yeah, no, you don't want to do that? You're already R-rated. What are you holding back for?
Exactly. I was expecting her to do it. Like, I thought she was going to do it whenever she was walking toward them in the Jeep, just bow while they were in the front seat, but that didn't happen. And yeah, that's kind of it.
That at least would have been a little bit of payoff.
I'd have been like, oh damn, they actually did that. Like, wow, you might would have got a higher letter grade than what I'm going to give you if you actually would have had the balls to do that, but you didn't.
You didn't.
But that's the Lodge. Like I said earlier about movies with trying to have trauma and all this stuff and artsy elevated horror, that's fine. But another thing that I was going to mention earlier, but I had to wait till we got to the ending, was I am so tired of people online. This is the bleakest ending in any movie history. This movie's so bleak, it just leaves you just wanting to watch a comedy right after. I'm like, dude, I am so over horror movies having to have these bleak bad endings where the bad guy wins. It's just they think it makes it scarier, but in some, if it's a good movie, yes, it works. But doing it every single time where half these films don't work and it's the evil wins, I'm so tired of it. I know this came out in 2019. It's been a couple years, but since then we've seen plenty of movies do the same thing, and this film started it, or didn't start it, but they had this trope in there.
This trope was well underway, and it just wanted to hop on the bandwagon. Assuming that any reviews or recommendations you see online from horror reviewers, assuming that they're not paid reviews, you're right. They're gonna say, if they say this is one of the bleakest endings, you'll rethink your life after watching the end of The Lodge. You'll want to hug your kids. Motherfucker, this was Vanilla Ice Cream. Have you ever seen The Mist?
Yeah.
I watched The Mist when I was 11. Still, I can't think of a horror movie ending better than that. You want to talk about bleak? Have you ever seen a Serbian film?
Yeah.
Dude, this is not bleak. This is as milquetoast as it gets when you come to the entire campus of elevated horror film students. Like, no, man. You want bleak? Shoot the kids on screen. You already have an R rating. don't imply, don't leave it up to my imagination. I'm not imagining shit after this. I'm tired of this movie. So
No.
no, this movie was not bleak. It was not lasting. It was not creative. It spent so much time wanting to be in the conversation of elevated horror that it didn't even insert itself into horror. This movie started out, look, no disrespect to these filmmakers, right? Much love. I know you got passion in your craft. It's a duo of directors, I believe.
Correct.
Shout out to them. I know they make like foreign films that I'm not familiar with. If they wrote the screenplay, whoever wrote the screenplay, hey, no disrespect when I say this, but this is what I expect from a film student who just watched The Shining and then The Lighthouse right after it and thought that he could make a blend of the both. So no, this wasn't a good movie. This wasn't a lasting movie. This was, and as soon as the credits rolled, I was like, what was the theme? What was the message? I mean, before we even get to the grades, what was your because clearly this movie wants you to know that there's some kind of emotional, psychological, sociological conversation to be had about this movie. What was the message that you picked up on from this movie?
The only thing I can really think of is, maybe um, the overbearingness of maybe religion in people that grow up young. Maybe they grew up in a maybe not necessarily a cult, but maybe their family is super religious, or the people they're with are super religious, and you're taught to believe this one exact thing, and maybe if you're raised a certain way and then you kind of come out of that, maybe you can kind of see how it may be a metaphor about how people need to think for themselves and choose to believe what they want to believe instead of being forced to believe one way. But other than that, other than of course the overcoming trauma and guilt, which we've seen that gazillion times, that's pretty much about it. There was nothing that, like, when I saw Hereditary, um I don't really know what I was thinking, but damn, that movie just had me like thinking about just a lot. It just had me left speechless about some of the things that I saw. Not necessarily about the themes in the movie that I took with me personally, just about the things that I saw and how well it was executed. This movie tried to do that, but it had nothing to say or do. And everything they tried to do, like I said in the beginning, they tried to build this up, but there was nothing to build with.
Yeah, exactly. There was nothing to build with it. They wanted to be in the conversation. They wanted the TikToks made about it. They wanted the recommendations about how this is the most elevated horror of the elevated horror you're going to get this month. They wanted that conversation, but this movie was flat. This movie was empty. I can't think of a coherent message. There's bits and pieces of different messages, like maybe religion bad or religion good, or believe kids or don't believe kids, or sometimes kids are the evil ones, or don't leave your wife. Like there's a bunch of little like niche messages here.
Yeah.
But if even if I can form a coherent theme sentence of maybe like the there's two sides to every there's two sides to every
Story.
devout Christian household, and neither one of them's right, or something like that. I don't know. You're trying to have some kind of controversial religious statement, and you're not making any statement. So not only do I not have any statement, not only do I not have any payoff, there's nothing lasting about this movie. There's not that one scene. I mean, Hereditary had the head scene.
Yeah.
The Lighthouse had a couple of those scenes.
Yeah.
It, the Shining had the axe scene, or the old lady in the tub. They don't
Yep.
have a single that scene of the movie. So there's no lasting impact of this movie. There's no message of this movie. If there is a message and the directors aren't just leaving it up to, well, it's up to your interpretation, that's lazy.
Yeah.
It I want to know what the message is. I can handle a deep message. But right now, the deepest message that you could convince me that you have is so niche and so specifically targeted to essentially survivors of fanatical Christian households. Who is this movie for? So, no, man, this movie is a whole bunch of nothing. It looks good, but that's it.
I agree. I kept I might have mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I kept waiting for something like paranormal to come into play, but that
Yeah,
never happened.
yeah.
Um,
The synopsis was like specters of her past are coming back to haunt her.
correct.
I was,
And
yeah,
I mean, yeah, maybe she was having some flashbacks, but it's about it. It's not really paranormal.
no, there was nothing supernatural about this movie. She was having hallucinations, yeah. And in the sermons in a suicide cult, the idea is creepy, but there's nothing supernatural in this entire movie. So I, I would have liked to have seen something. I mean, maybe it really was purgatory after all. Do a Shyamalan-esque twist, and it really was purgatory. Do
Yeah,
something. But no, man, too artsy fartsy, too pretentious, too busy trying to sell you on the idea that it has a message rather than actually writing one.
correct. Yeah, I did see, and after I watch these movies, I like to go on and do some research. Hey, maybe there's something I missed, maybe something I'm not getting. I like to see other people's opinions on it. I did see one theory on it, which I don't really buy into, but I think if you do buy into it, it kind of works. It really was a theory of how in the very beginning of the film, Alicia Silverstone's character, the mom, you can tell she kind of already has a disdain for the new mom,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned that the daughter has an attachment to the doll, that whenever the mom commits suicide, she maybe goes into purgatory, and her feelings and beliefs about this new woman is kind of forced upon the kids. Maybe that's like a supernatural feel, and they use that and they take it out on her. They take the mom's guilt and her anger about what's happening and kind of push it on to her, and that's kind of how all this stuff happens, and then it ends up backfiring. I mean, that kind of made a little bit of sense to me, but if there had been a little bit more of a supernatural, like there's one scene in the movie which we didn't talk about, but it's where it's kind of getting like creepy, and then like the organ music is playing, and it's showing like the hallways and stuff. We see this one where the dog it barks, and we just see someone's like back walking up around the corner up the stairs. I thought for sure, I was like, okay, there's someone in the house. There's another supernatural being at play. There's something going on. But that never happened. I guess it just was Aiden or one of the kids. I don't know. And I don't know. That's just kind of something that I saw that maybe.
Yeah, it was open for interpretation. You could interpret it as it was an intruder in the house, like Black Christmas. You can interpret it as it was Grace doing her sleepwalking shtick. You can interpret it as Aiden, and he's up there conniving and coming up with a plan. The movie intentionally left it open because, and this wasn't the only case of it. The movie left a bunch of little like breadcrumbs in a trail to make the audience theorize and make the audience come up with a theme and come up with an idea and basically plug the holes in a story. No, no. I tell you all the time, I like horror movies that make me think. I like to chew on it and I like to talk about it. But there's a difference between making me think about your content and making me come up with the plot for you.
Right.
There's a vast difference there. This movie does the latter of it. It's there's no implication. There's no implication of supernatural forces at work. There's no visual cue that the mom is even cool theory of mom being in purgatory, but that's all it is. It's a theory.
Right.
And beyond that, it's a much more entertaining movie that wasn't ever made. So no, man. If the most interesting thing about this movie is fan theories,
Correct.
your movie sucks. Straight up.
I agree. So let's get into this. We'll grade it. I'll go first since I picked the movie. Um, like you said, this is a really, really it's shot very well. There are a lot of great cinematography, a lot of great scenes, the color, the lighting, everything looks really good. Um, there are a couple scenes that are okay. But for the most part, I've got characters I don't like. I got characters that make god awful decisions. I've got no real theme, no real nothing to hang my hat on that makes me think about this movie after it happened. Um, I there's just not much there for me to hang my hat on other than there's a couple cool looking scenes. It's shot well, it's in the snow, and that's about it. So it just was a boring movie. Nothing happened. You can't, like I've said like 4 or 5 times already, you were trying to build to something, but there was nothing there to build. So for me, I'm gonna give this movie, I'm gonna give it a D, a flat D. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you disappointed, or were you
I
just
was disappointed. And not like I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be the best movie ever. But
you were going
I
off recommendations
I
online,
was
right?
I was going off some recommendations, and I passed it a couple times on Hulu, and I'd seen people talking about it, and when I read the synopsis or the summary, I was like, man, this actually might be pretty good, and so I was kind of fired up, and then it's another one of those movies where, oh my god, the bad person wins, evil always wins. It's like, oh god, I don't care. It's just I'm so over that happening. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see any more movies about people dealing with trauma or guilt is the main thing. People, everybody here deals with something. So it's like, what makes you special?
Yeah. What makes you special, and how much of your audience do you expect to have survived a cult and can relate to that? I mean, how much? 0% of your
Yeah,
audience can relate to any of these characters. I mean, yeah, you got the broken marriage and the homewrecker and the
correct.
new stepmom and the resentment towards them. Yeah, that's fine. But that, beyond the first act, that wasn't even really like a topic of the movie. So
Yeah. So, well, give me your 4 pillars of horror if you even feel like doing it.
the movie almost doesn't even deserve him. But it's what we do. So 4 golden rules of horror. Rule number 1: don't show me the monster. There was no monster in this movie. Like I said in the beginning, the conflict, the storytelling conflict, it wasn't man versus man. It wasn't man versus nature. It wasn't man versus supernatural. It wasn't even man versus world. It was man versus self. I mean, this is Grace grappling with psychosis, being egged on by kids. Okay, I get it. Not entertaining, no payoff, and also why? Like I asked myself, what do I take away from this movie? I take nothing away from this movie. I didn't even have a good time. So no, you can't show me the monster, or you can't not show me the monster because you don't have a monster. So no, you don't get that one. Rule number 2: be scary at all times, not just when the threat is on screen. I'll give you this one because there is that very hammed up, forced down your throat feeling of, oh, you're feeling uneasy watching this. You don't know what's gonna happen. I get it. You're taken from the playbook of A24 and you're doing your best, right? They're NFL, you're Pee Wee football. Hmm. You know, rule number 3: don't rely only on jump scares. I didn't get scared once at this movie. There was two
No.
loud noises. There was a gunshot and Grace slamming on a piano. Loud noises don't equal jump scares. Beyond that, there's no scares at all. There's not even jump scares. I would have been fine with a jump scare at this point, but I didn't get anything. So no, you don't get that rule either. And push the boundaries? No. Telling me that you're elevated horror and doing this artsy fartsy movie and not doing anything with a lasting impact like Hereditary or like Midsummer, and not even having the balls to do gory stuff with it. No, you didn't push any boundaries. Now, if you had done what I said and you shot the kids on screen, I might have given you that one. I
Yeah.
really might have, because if there's one thing that horror shies away from, even right now, it's violence against kids on camera. So obviously, I'm not condoning that, but I'd like to see that a little bit more. That's a boundary I'd like to see pushed. All the other boundaries have been pushed. I said this about Annabelle the first time I ever saw Annabelle. You've seen the first Annabelle, right?
Yeah.
There's a scene where Annabelle convinces the mom or whatever to throw her baby across the room, and it slaps on the floor. The whole movie goes quiet. I'm like, oh shit, she just threw her baby and didn't realize it because she thought she was throwing Annabelle. It creeps up, it creeps up, it creeps up. I'm like, dude, we're about to see a dead baby. It was a doll. It was a baby doll. So no, you took that away. You could have pushed the boundary. You should have pushed the boundary. You had the rating for it. Do something of lasting impact. At least Midsummer had a couple of like, oh shit scenes,
Yeah.
So no, you get one of my 4 golden rules. On a personal note, man, this movie started off reminding me of The Shining. I don't know why you dangled the Thing in there. The Thing is not, the Thing's message of cabin fever is not even in the same league as your conversation about cabin fever. So no, fuck you for that. Don't put the Thing in there. It's my movie. And then the movie ended like it was trying to be The Lighthouse or Lamb, or any other A24 movie that isn't Hereditary. So no, this movie spent so much time looking good and telling me that it was good. I didn't spend any time actually being memorable. So 1 out of 4, you're in the D range. I'm going to be honest with you, man. Even for a low budget horror film, you're not memorable. I'm never going to watch you again. I'm not going to recommend you to anyone. You looked good. And that's why I'm going to give you a flat D. Flat D too. I'm not buying this. I'm not watching it again.
Yep.
There's no conversation to be had about this.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Yeah, just a flat D for us. So, yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in and sticking with us. Hope you don't watch The Lodge if you have seen it, but maybe you do. And if you do enjoy it, tell us why you did. Maybe we missed something. Who knows? So,
but if you're going to watch The Lodge for Christmas, go watch The Shining or go watch the original Black Christmas instead.
Correct. So throughout the rest of the month of December, we are going to keep doing these holiday, Merry Christmas themed movies, things that are themed around Christmas around that time, maybe not necessarily about Christmas, but there's a couple of good ones in there. A lot of them that we've seen, we haven't discussed yet. So it'll be interesting to talk about those. So, well, thank you guys so much for tuning into Every Horror Film, where horror is forever, and we'll see you on the next one.
The mummy has now been located.
The living mummy. The living mummy.
Bullets won't stop.
Some creature out of time.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
He's completely out of control.
I saw those bodies.
Is he a man or a monster?
You actually knew a werewolf in a peaceful town where nothing ever happened.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
In the mystical regions of Transylvania.